welcome back to another chapter of this hobby horse making masterclass. In today's episode, we're going to be covering how to make the mane. So we're almost finished, it's super exciting. We now have our hobby horse that is looking almost ready. It's all stuffed and shaded, got the ears and eyes and nose on. And the last thing that we're missing is the mane. And then of course the stick, which we're gonna be doing last. There are quite a lot of different ways of doing the mane. The strategy or the technique that I'm using today is I'm going to be attaching the mane after the horse is stuffed. So you can do this in the process when you're cutting out the middle strip. You can actually make a mane and sew it into the middle strip and then sew together the horse, and when you turn it inside out, the mane is already going to be there. But I'm going to sew it on afterwards because I think that is just a little easier. I'm using yarn for my hobby horse mane today. This is probably the most common choice that people use for their manes, but you can also use stuff like fake hair or like synthetic hair, that you use to make longer dreads or something, or you can use any other type of material that can look like hair. But I have here I think this is a wool mix. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do, or how we actually make the mane, is we're gonna have kind of a longer strand of yarn that's going to be running along the neck like this, and to this strand of yarn we're going to be tying smaller knots, and these knots are going to be the mane, and it's going to hang along the side like this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to attach this kind of long strand of yarn here to the back of the neck. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure out. I'm going to be like, okay, I want it to start here, and I'm going to hold my thumb there, and then I'm gonna run it along the bottom or the back, and I'd say around there. Cut this yarn strand off. So now we have this yarn strand here, and I'll grab some thread and a needle, and I'm actually gonna sew this strand onto the hobby horse. So I like to start here in the forehead. I'm gonna make a little loop here, so I don't have this as a loose end. I actually make it into a little loop. It becomes a little easier to sew it in place. And I put it here and I'll hold it with my thumb. And then I'm gonna go with my needle, and I'm just gonna make some simple stitches here to get the yarn to stick in place. The string, and I'll sew that back part or the other end of the string onto the neck. So I actually want this to kind of end. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'll just cut off that string, and I'll cut off this piece of yarn as well. Great, now we have this strand of yarn attached to the back of the hobby horse. So what we need to do now is we need to make a lot of kind of shorter strands of yarn, which we will then tie on to the hobby horse. And to get a lot of strands of yarn that are the same length, what you can do is you can grab an object, and I'll use my phone because I think this gives a really nice length. And you can actually check first. Okay, to check the length of the strand that you're going to be making, just simply wrap it once around the object, grab it where it wrapped around, fold it in two, and make a small little knot like that. And this is actually going to be the length of the mane. So you can check and be like, yeah, it looks pretty good. So I'm happy with the length that my phone here is giving. So I'll simply just grab the strand and I'll start wrapping it around my phone like this. And the yarn is doing a little dance. Okay, and when you've made a couple of rounds like this, you simply go in with your scissors and you cut it off here at some point. And when you lay it down flat, you have a bunch of strands in the same length. Amazing. I'm gonna be doing 3 strands per knot, I think. So I'm just gonna separate them here. Let me quickly demonstrate how to create these knots that we're gonna be using to tie the mane. So you grab a strand of yarn like this, and you fold it in half so that it looks like this. And what you do later is you pull this loop, or you put it in under the long strand, so you can see now it's underneath then you thread these two ends, the yarn ends here, you thread them through the loop, and then you pull, and there you have a knot that's looking very nice. And you just slide that all the way to the front of the horse. And this process you simply rinse and repeat until you have done all the knots down to the end of your yarn strand down here. And when you run out of strands, it's simply a matter of grabbing your yarn and creating some more. And of course, the bigger the object that you use to wrap your yarn around, the longer your mane will become. And I'm actually going to be making a completely separate series about making the manes and using different types of material for the manes. How you can do, kind of the stand-up manes for the fjords, how you get that to stand up nicely. And also how you work with stuff like synthetic hair. So definitely look forward to that. Okay. When you have reached the end of your yarn thread here in the middle, we're simply going to be sewing this entire mane onto the horse, because right now it's loose like this. So we want to be sewing that onto the horse. Before we can do that, however, we're going to be pinning this long mane into place. So I'm going to grab some pins. And now I'm gonna take care that when I'm pinning, I really want to be pinning this mane in the middle of the middle strip so that it looks nice and symmetrical. So I'm just gonna take care to line up, so make sure that there's both, or like as much space here on both sides of the mane. And then I'll just start pinning. Here we go, lovely. And now you can check once more from the top that you've pinned it in a straight line. When you're happy with how that looks, we're simply going to sew that into place. And let's start up here by the forelock. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the string through and I'm going to sew down every individual knot that we have done. That is going to ensure that the mane really stays in place. So I'm going here with the needle. So I've just come from this knot here. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put the needle down on this side and I'm gonna come up on the other side of this knot. So I pull it through diagonal like that. Pull through. Looks like I caught a little piece of yarn here. And then I simply keep going like that. So I go in by one knot, the other end of it, and by doing that I'm actually making, it's just these simple loop stitches all over again. And when you've reached the end of your mane here, you simply make another stitch and make a knot. I'm gonna make 2 knots. We'll take all of the pins here out of the mane. Our hobby horse now has a completely new look with the new hairstyle and everything, but we're not completely done, or at least I'm not. You can just simply be happy with how the mane looks like now, or you can give your hobby horse a haircut, which I'm going to do. Right now the mane is a little too long and you can see the ends here are looking a little rough in my opinion. So I'm just gonna go ahead and trim that down a little bit. So I'm gonna start with the forelock. I'm gonna grab my forelock like this and just simply go ahead and cut. And we're gonna see how that looks now. I think that's looking pretty cute. Now he's looking a little more sophisticated, I think. And that's the forelock done. I'll now go and move on to the mane. I'm gonna make it even more flat here with the scissors. I'm gonna start from the back. I'm gonna cut off all of these rough ends. And that might just be enough for this hair trimming. See already what a huge difference that makes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that a little more. And I'm gonna shake them in a little more to see if we've missed something. You can see more loose ends show up every time you do that. See how I got some new ones here just now? And cut those. What a cute horse. Lovely. I'm happy with that. As you can see, the horse is pretty happy too, I think. When you have finished your hairdressing appointment, or when your horse has finished his or her hairdressing appointment, I think that we can call this episode done. We have now sewn on the mane, and the last step in this tutorial is to attach the stick. And this we will be covering in the next chapter. See you then.